The Packers, by the way, are 7-point favorites at the Giants. Jameis Winston will get the call for the G-Men. We'll get to your phone calls coming up, 877-3DP Show. We bring in Jason Garrett, NBC Football Night in America studio analyst, and you can see him on Football Night in America at 7 Eastern with the crew as they get ready for the Lions and the Eagles. Kickoff will be 8:20 Eastern. Help me understand this from a coaching perspective, because I saw where Brian Daboll was being blamed a little bit for Jackson Dart's reckless play and being in concussion protocol or looked at for concussions, being in the blue tent 4 times through 7 games is not an accident. So what role, does the coach play in how a player plays, particularly your quarterback?
It's a tricky question. Hey, happy birthday to Melissa, by the way. A tricky question. I think when you call a lot of quarterback design runs, that's where you can take some responsibility. You can talk to quarterbacks till you're blue in the face about, hey, slide, do all that kind of stuff. Typically, those lessons are learned by experience. They get hit a couple times and they realize, hey, I'm not a running back. These guys in the NFL are big and strong. They knock you around. They start sliding. But I think when you're calling design quarterback runs, which the Giants do, you can take some responsibility as a coach. They love that quarterback. It's the old John Madden used to call it, the counter trade play that John Riggins used to run. What they're doing in football these days is they're running that play with the quarterback. They're pulling the backside guard, the backside tackle, and he's running downhill like a running back would run. And it's been a really good play for the Giants. But, when you're calling those plays, you just have to be careful of calling that thing too much.
What do you see or don't see from Jordan Love?
Oh, I see someone who's got a bright future who just plays a little bit inconsistently. I love him to death. Sometimes I get concerned that he throws the ball off his back foot a little bit too much. He has this ability, and I think he probably learned from being around Aaron Rodgers, to throw the ball from so many different positions. And it's rare. And so much of playing quarterback in the NFL is having the ability to do that. But when the pocket is clean, stand in there and throw it. And I think sometimes he misses throws because of that and gets a little frivolous. And then that kind of builds on itself. So I'm really bullish on the guy. I think he's a heck of a player. He's a little bit streaky. When he has down games, it kind of stays down. And when he's hot, he's as hot as there is in the NFL. So, for them, to me, the biggest thing is getting Josh Jacobs involved and making it about their running game first. And then he's going to get some cleaner looks in the passing game. And I think he'll get back on track.
Yeah, I wondered about being a little more aggressive on first down instead of, if you stop Josh Jacobs and it's 2nd and 7, now I'm getting him in an obvious passing situation. So I don't know if Matt LaFleur changes this up a little bit so you're not as predictable or as conservative as they've been.
No doubt. And as I say that about getting Josh Jacobs more involved, the tendency sometimes is, okay, just hand him the ball on first down. And you have to do that. But oftentimes it's the classic, getting some run formations, make it look like run, go play action, make some first downs on 1st and 2nd down. Don't go run. Hey, Jordan, go make 3rd and 7 for us. That's a hard rhythm for a quarterback. So I think your point's well made. And then when you do some of that run action stuff, that play action stuff, you make some first downs, that just simply gives you more attempts. And that's when Josh Jacobs gets more involved.
What's it mean to you when Dan Campbell says, I'm going to take over the play calling?
It's an interesting decision. It really is, particularly for an offense that's been, by a lot of measuring sticks, pretty good. I mean, they're a top 5 offense, and they've had some big games so far. But we talked about it on the show the other night. I've known Dan for a long time. He and I were teammates with the Giants, and I love him to death. He's a great friend. And one thing I know about him is he's convicted. He's convicted in life. He's convicted in football. And he knows exactly what he wants. And that's why they've had success in Detroit. He and Brad Holmes got together and said, hey, what's the vision for this team? What kind of players do we need? What do we want to do on offense, defense, kicking game? And they've stuck through it through the thick and thin. And he trusts his instincts. He trusts his convictions. And clearly, he didn't like the feel of what was going on offense. And I give him credit because it's a bold move. There's an old story, though, that my friend Norv Turner used to tell. And I say this with incredible respect for everybody involved. But he was coaching for the Rams back in the 80s. And the Rams had Eric Dickerson. John Robinson was the head coach. And they had a really good team. But they would play the 49ers, they were incredible at the time defensively. And the Niners would shut down the running game. And then they'd play the Giants. And the Giants, who were really good, shut down the running game. And then they'd go play Atlanta. And John Robinson would come in and say, hey, I'm going to come in. I'm going to get involved in this run game. I'm going to take over this thing. And Atlanta wasn't very good at the time. And Dickerson would rush for 200 yards. And then Robinson would come back in on Monday and say, hey, I got you guys squared away now. Let's get back to work. And so I get a little nervous about that with Detroit because Washington was depleted. They weren't very good on defense. They're banged up. And Detroit goes in there and they're like Detroit at its best. But now here comes Philly. So it's going to be a little bit different. So I wonder going forward how it's all going to play out. But again, I admire Dan's conviction. And Dan gets underappreciated as a football guy. People think of him as this great speech maker and all of that. He's a damn good football coach, as smart a player as I've ever been around. So he knows what the heck he's doing on offense. But he's changed the dynamic of the staff. And so as they go forward, he'll have more decisions to make.
Yeah, but that's tough being an offensive coordinator because that's a vote of no confidence when Dan goes, you know what, I'm going to take over play calling.
Yeah, and again, it's tricky. But the flip side to that is, okay, leave John Morton in place and then micromanage it. You don't like what you're getting, so you're in the meetings more and you're micromanaging it more. Why don't we do this? And then during the game, you're in the guy's ear, and all of a sudden he loses his rhythm as well. So, it can go back and forth. That's a delicate balance when you're doing it that way. So Dan was bold, like he always is, and said, I'm taking over it. But we just got to watch that thing going forward as they play better defenses.
Jason Garrett, NBC Football Night in America, and it'll be the Lions at the Eagles kickoff at 8:20 Eastern on Sunday night. Are you done with coaching?
I love the job I'm in right now. I really do.
Wait a minute. Are you interested in coaching?
Well, let me answer it this way. I love the job I'm in. I'm really fortunate, but I was really fortunate to play for a long time and coach for a long time. And I can say this to you honestly, that I've loved every part of it. I love coaching football. I love being a position coach, a coordinator, and a head coach. So, if that opportunity presents itself in a way that seems like it's attractive, sure, I'd look at it. I can't go back to playing. That's not an option anymore. But I love what I'm doing. I love every part of the job I have at NBC, and I'm really fortunate.
When's the last time a team contacted you?
I don't know that anybody's ever contacted me. I've talked to a lot of people in the business over the last 4 years, but nobody's ever contacted me and said, I want you to be my head coach or my offensive coordinator. But I've talked to a lot of people about football since I've stopped coaching.
But you're young. You're young by coaching standards.
Yeah. Again, I love what I'm doing. I do. Well, I'm going to be in Philadelphia on Sunday night with Lions and Eagles. You kidding me? What's better than that?
I get the message. I'm just putting a little pressure on you in the pocket. That's all. I don't think you can scramble out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best ones climb the pocket and stand in there.
Yeah. You get to see Jeremiah Love with Notre Dame.
I do.
Is he now a top 15 pick in your opinion?
Hard for me to know the draft right now, but he is a top 15 caliber player in my mind in any year. He is so much fun to watch, and I've gotten a chance to know him a little bit over the last couple of years, and what a fantastic young man, and driven to be great. And unselfish. He's got Jadarian Price, and these guys encourage each other. It's like this incredible tandem of running backs that Notre Dame has. But when you watch football, Dan, I always say this: the identity of a team, the identity of a player, for me, can be defined by the most expert person and the least expert person watching the same thing and drawing the same conclusion. So Vince Lombardi goes to practice and sees Jeremiah Love practice and sees him play on Saturday, he says, wow, that's an unbelievable football player. And Mother Teresa, who's never seen football before, she does the same thing and says, who's number 4? You know? And to me, I think when you watch games and certain players just simply stand out above the rest, you're like, wow, that guy's different. And we have it in our game right now in the NFL. I mean, there's certain guys that are like, oh my God, who is number 1 for the Packers? He just seems faster than everybody. And you can go on and on that list. So I think Jeremiah Love, for me in college football, is that guy. He stands out. He's better than everybody else on the field.
You were in Dallas. You got there in, I think, 1992?
I did.
So the Herschel Walker trade was 1989.
Yes.
What was the sense when you got there of that trade and really the building blocks for winning a couple of Super Bowls?
Well, I think it was critical. I think everybody recognized that at the time. And, not only did they get all the picks, but they got the players, and they traded the players for more picks. And, there would always be these articles about, okay, what are the results of the Herschel Walker trade? And I can't remember off the top of my head, but ended up being Russell Maryland and Emmitt Smith and Tony Tolbert. And you go on and on and on about the guys that were taken as a result of that trade, who are the cornerstone players on those championship teams. And, so it really was the foundation of everything. And, Jimmy used to say this, that he said that, I had no real expertise over everybody else in evaluating players, which I think he was being modest, because I think he does. But he just had a lot of picks, and they picked all these guys, and they ended up being the building blocks of some amazing teams. And so it was really significant. I do think people recognized it at the time.
You played the position, coached the position, but at what point do you realize that you need to move on from a quarterback? Yeah, I know the money factor is big in this, but I don't know what Jacksonville has with Trevor Lawrence. I don't know what Miami has with Tua. I don't know what Arizona has with Kyler. Now, they're all getting paid, but at some point, there's diminishing returns there. So as a coach, when do you know that this guy is not going to give us maybe the best chance to win?
Well, it's a great question. I think it's a pertinent question for this time in football, because as you talk about those guys, we also talk about Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones and some of these other guys who were kicked to the curb by their organizations, and now they're thriving somewhere else. So I think teams are probably a little concerned about doing that again and having their guy who they've invested so much in go somewhere else and have success. To me, as we all know, it's a cliche to say it, football is the ultimate team sport. Nobody's fate is more determined by that than the quarterback. So the quarterback needs a supporting cast. He needs linemen. He needs playmakers. He needs a runner. He needs a defense. He needs coaching, all of that. And oftentimes these guys who get picked high go to bad places where none of those things are in place, and they don't know how to play yet. And so you have a double whammy there, and that they're not ready, and they're certainly not ready in this environment that they're playing in. So one of the things that's a factor for all these things is when they have so much adversity and they're part of all the losing, the question is, can they ever survive in that place? Do they need to go somewhere else to reinvent themselves? And I think that's what happens to a lot of these guys. If they stay there, even if the environment gets better, there are too many scars. And sometimes they need to wipe the whiteboard clean and start anew. So for all those guys that you're talking about, they're not necessarily in great environments. In Miami, in Jacksonville, in Arizona, the teams around them have not been that good. And I've seen it happen with players who are the best that ever walk at that position. Troy Aikman, at the end of his career, he probably was a better player than he was when we were winning Super Bowls, right? But the supporting cast was diminished. And you can look at, you picked a guy, Dan Marino, so many others who were elite, best of all time guys. When the supporting cast got worse, harder for them to have success. So if that's the case for them, it certainly is the case for some of these guys. I do think at some point you have to use your football expertise and your gut to say, hey, I'm sticking with them or I'm moving on. And oftentimes that happens with a new coach.
Good to talk to you. Safe travels to Philadelphia. Play nice there.
Yeah. Always enjoy it.
Thank you, bud. That's Jason Garrett, Football Night in America. Yeah, it just dawned on me that he probably still wants to coach. Relatively young, maybe an opportunity. And, it dawned on me, with the Giants opening there. And I thought, I wonder, maybe he hasn't been contacted, but you have other people who have been maybe contacted on your behalf. I brought up Bill Belichick to the Giants. Bill Belichick responds to that question right after this.